Now, the second book he wrote is Proverbs. And if Song of Solomon is untainted love, Proverbs is, tainted love. It's tainted love. Because we read in Solomon's story in 1 Kings chapter 3, he doesn't go very long into his reign in that he makes a political alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, by marrying Pharaoh's daughter. Now, this would have been the pragmatic thing to do. All the kings did it. This is the way that you shore up your geopolitical agenda. This is the way that you safeguard your kingdom. And so he does what's pragmatic. He does what's practical. But if indeed the Song of Solomon does represent truly, literally Solomon's first love, this young Shulamite girl, possibly Abishag the Shunammite, then now in doing the practical thing, the pragmatic thing, the political thing, what he's done is he's given away a little piece of his heart. And he's not only just given away a piece of his heart because he's now married someone outside of this first love, but God also told the kings that they should not marry many wives. So he's given a little bit of his heart for God away as well. And by the way, if you go through life, have you ever noticed? You begin, hopefully in this room, you've experienced this first love at some point with Jesus Christ. And then you grew up a little and you just can't be that foolhardy anymore. I mean, you just can't live that way. So you got to do pragmatic things. You've got to do practical things just to make it. And before you know it, you start giving away little pieces of your heart. Now for him, as is the case with so many of us, don't we enjoy and don't we sing about and don't we really appreciate in here the long suffering of God? I mean, if we're in here, each one of us are in here because God's been patient with us. He's not just given us a couple chances. We're in here because He's given us more than we can count chances. But that said, I would say if we really were honest, many of us might find ourselves in a spot where Solomon finds himself in middle age, where we've mistaken God's long suffering for His acceptance. And we've said, well, He's allowing it, so it might not be that bad. And in fact, for Solomon, even though he's given a little piece of his heart away here or there, by the time he pens Proverbs, he's a middle-aged guy, and he's kind of at the zenith of his power. The kingdom's bigger than it was ever under his father. He's prosperous. He's peaceful. His name means peace, for goodness sake. He's got everything going for him. And yet, in giving little pieces of his heart away, I've often wondered as I read Proverbs, which he penned in middle age, if he's personifying in that book wisdom as a woman, he hasn't really fell in love with wisdom. All that his wisdom had gotten him. And as he pens this proverb book that we have with all these little pithy sayings, have you noticed there's no more poetry? Yeah, it's pithy. Yeah, you can remember some of them. But it's mostly prose. It lacks the poetry, the beauty, the passion that he once had. And so here he is middle-aged and he pens truth without previous passion. And I'd say that's a lot of Christian lives. We start with little truth. We just know enough. And yet we're so passionate because we've met the truth with a capital T. But then as we go along, we start to know a lot of truth. Little t truth that comes from the capital T truth, but then making some decisions here or there, we can know a bunch in our minds without having the same stirring in our heart. And so we're longing for something, whether we know it or not. And Solomon, I think, found himself there because it's about this time in his story that the Queen of Sheba comes to visit him. Now, 1 Kings chapter 10, the Queen of Sheba shows up. She, like the Shulamite girl from years ago, is dark. She's beautiful. She's sexy. She's rich. She comes from Ethiopia with a caravan. And guess what? She adores Solomon. Who doesn't like to be adored? I had a friend who told me one time, you know what it would take for me to like a girl? All they got to do is like me. I mean, we love to be adored. And she adores him. I mean, she lavishes her love upon him. And yet, she eventually leaves. And some have proposed that when she leaves, you read the story, Solomon gave her all this stuff. It's as if he desired her to stay. Why? I would propose that guess what? He was trying to rekindle what he had with the young, dark, lovely Shulamite in middle age. He was in a midlife crisis. And he was trying to get back what he had at 20, at 40, or at 45. You ever notice that what we often long for in life is for some season to be recreated? And if you've ever tried that, by the way, have you ever noticed that no matter how much you try to recreate it, it's just a poor person's version of what was?